Hello, my sexy listeners. I'm ThatPodcastGirl C Dub. I'm back, and this is a podcast about house music. I want to say hello to a few places I've really been seeing lately: London, Liverpool, Dublin, and Melbourne. I see you showing up and staying, and I see you streaming this through Chromecast, letting it play out in your space, and I really appreciate that. Wherever you're listening from tonight, I'm really glad you're here. Tonight's episode is sponsored by Cindy Wang at Douglas Elliman Real Estate Garden City office. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or just want to understand the New York market, Cindy is who you should call. Details at the end of the show. All right, let's get into it. It's the mid-1990s. A DJ named Sasha is standing in a booth somewhere in England, probably Manchester, probably late in the night. He's playing a set that will last 6 or 7 hours. He has a crate of records behind him and another one on the floor. He knows every groove on every disc. He knows which tracks need to run long and which ones can be cut early. He is reading the room with his whole body, one ear in the headphones and one ear open to the floor, and he is doing something that looks effortless and is anything but. What nobody in that room is thinking about is what it cost him to get there. The weight of those crates on the flight over. The negotiation with the airline about a second bag. The way touring DJs in that era were essentially porters of their own sound, carrying the physical weight and evidence of their taste across borders every single week. That tension between the intimacy of the booth and the logistics of moving through the world is where this episode lives. A serious touring DJ in the mid-1990s traveled with between 50 and 100 records at roughly 180 grams per record. That's close to 40 pounds of music before you add sleeves, cases, or the crate itself. International bookings were increasing because budget carriers in Europe were making air travel genuinely cheaper. Our beloved Ryanair launched its low-fare model in 1991. EasyJet followed in 1995. The geography of a DJ career was expanding fast, and the weight of the booth was not keeping pace. Pioneer had been trying to solve that problem since 1992, when they released the CDJ 500. It was the first CD player designed specifically for DJ use. It had a jog wheel and pitch control. It was also widely ignored because the jog wheel felt nothing like vinyl, and the culture was not ready to give up the feel of wax for the convenience of a silver disc. The CDJ 500 sat in boots mostly unused or got pushed aside when a serious resident came in. What actually moved the needle was the CDJ 1000, which Pioneer released in 2001. That machine had a larger jog wheel with genuine resistance. It had stored cue points, which meant a DJ could mark the exact moment in a track where the first kick lands and return it instantly every time without hunting by ear in the headphones. It had a display that showed you where you were inside the track in real time, and it had a pitch range wide enough to match tempos across the full spectrum of house and techno. That display changed something quietly. When you play vinyl, you read the record. You watch how much groove is left on the side to sense how much time remains. You develop an eye for it over years. It becomes second nature, the way a cook learns to read a pan. The CDJ 1000 replaced that with a number on a screen. More accurate, less embodied. DJs felt the difference, even when they couldn't always say what it was. The transition didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't clean. Through the late 1990s and into the early 2000s, booths held both formats at once. Some DJs used CDJs for promos and unreleased tracks, things that weren't pressed to vinyl yet, while keeping their main sets on wax. Others moved to CD entirely and caught grief for it. It was a real argument about what the format demanded of the person playing it. We talked in an earlier episode about how Francois K, coming out of the Paradise Garage era in New York, was precise about the relationship between physical media and musical depth. That conversation was already happening inside the culture long before the CDJ 1000 made it urgent. Then, in 2004, Serato Scratch Live entered the booth and shifted the conversation again. Serato was a digital vinyl system built in partnership with the hardware company Rain. It worked by pressing a continuous timecode signal onto actual vinyl records. Those timecode records went on the turntable the same way a regular record did. A needle read the signal. Software on a laptop translated that signal into playback control for digital audio files. So the DJ was still touching real vinyl, still feeling the platter spin under their hands, still physically cueing and spinning and nudging. But the sound coming out of the speakers was coming from a hard drive. You could carry 10,000 tracks in a bag the size of a laptop case and still feel like you were playing records. For a lot of DJs, that was the bridge they had been waiting for. The ritual stayed intact. The weight problem disappeared. Traktor, developed by Native Instruments, was building competing software in the same window, and the two systems pushed each other forward quickly. By the mid-2000s, DVS rigs were standard in serious booths across New York, London, Berlin, and Tokyo. The sound itself was moving too. House music in the late 1990s and early 2000s was branching in ways that had distinct relationships to the booth. Progressive house, which Sasha and John Digweed were shaping through their DJ sets and their Renaissance compilation series, released in 1994, built around long filtered builds and gradual releases. The filter sweep became a defining technique. A DJ would slowly roll off the high frequencies over 30 or 60 seconds, pulling the track down to a hollow pulse, and then open the filter back up so the full sound returned with force. That technique worked because dance floor crowds had been trained by years of house music to read that physical sensation as anticipation. The body understood the filter sweep before the mind did. Sampling law tightened significantly through this period, and it pushed production in new directions. The Bridgeport music ruling in 2002 established that even a 2-second sample of recorded music required a license. Before that decision, the legal standard had been murky enough that small, unlicensed samples often went unchallenged. After it, producers either paid for clearances, which could be prohibitively expensive on an independent budget, or they built sounds from scratch. That shift accelerated house music's move toward synthesis and live instrumentation, and away from the collage sensibility of the early years. Larry Heard, Mr. Fingers, had been building deep house from synthesizers since the mid-1980s, using a Roland Juno 60 and a TR-909 in a bedroom in Chicago. What he made didn't sample anything. It was constructed from pure synthesis and feeling. That approach, building a complete emotional world from machines rather than borrowing fragments from existing recordings, became increasingly central to house production as the legal terrain around sampling tightened. His influence on the producers coming up in the late 1990s and early 2000s was significant and often acknowledged directly. The internet was doing something to distribution that no one had fully planned for. Napster launched in 1999. It was shut down by court order in 2001, but what it revealed about how music could move between people didn't close with the site. Private networks, forums, and FTP servers carried dance music tracks across the world within days of their creation. A white label pressed in Chicago could reach a record shop in Berlin in 2 weeks through physical distribution. The same track could be in a Tokyo DJ's inbox in 48 hours through a digital transfer. That compression of distance changed how scenes related to each other. The isolation that had allowed Chicago, Detroit, New York, and London to grow genuinely distinct sounds was harder to maintain when music moved this fast. Scenes became more porous, and influence traveled in every direction at once. A producer in Sao Paulo could hear a deep house record from London the week it was finished and respond to it before it was even officially released. Ibiza accelerated this further, and we spent a full episode on what that island did to house music's global spread. We talked about how Jose Padilla's sunset sets at Cafe Del Mar were carrying a particular sensibility, and what the internet did was make it instantaneous. Inside the booth, the cognitive experience of DJing was genuinely different with digital tools, and the DJs who understood that difference were the ones who used it most carefully. When you play vinyl, your brain is tracking multiple variables continuously: the physical position of the needle, the pitch drift, the incoming track in your headphones, the crowd, the EQ, how much time is left on the side. Beat matching by ear and hand requires constant micro-correction. Your attention is fully engaged because the system demands it. Stored cue points and quantized looping reduce that load. The system holds certain variables steady so the DJ doesn't have to. That freed attention can go toward reading the room more carefully, toward longer range planning, toward the emotional shape of the night. It can also go toward more frequent track changes, more effects layering, more intervention in the mix, because the tools make all of that easier. Restraint becomes a choice rather than a necessity, requiring new discipline. Jeff Mills understood this at the level of his body. Mills had been playing at Tresor in Berlin since the club opened in 1991 in a basement vault that used to be part of the Wertheim department store's safe deposit room. He played with 3 turntables, no headphones for cueing, matching records by memory and feel alone. His sets were precise at speeds that seemed impossible, but they never felt rushed. The crowd moved with him because he never lost a thread, not for a second. He knew where he was in every record at every moment, not because a screen told him, but because the music had become a part of him the way language does. People watched him from the rail the way you watch someone do something that looks like it shouldn't be physically possible. That story traveled through DJ culture because it stood for something people were starting to feel was worth protecting. Not the vinyl itself, but the depth of knowledge that living inside vinyl had required. So, if you were in a booth during this transition, I want to hear from you. Tell me about that first night you played without a crate and what that felt like. Email me at ThatPodcastGirl C Dub at gmail.com. And thank you again to Cindy Wang at Douglas Elliman Real Estate Garden City. She's the real deal, and I mean that. I'm That Podcast Girl C Dub, and this is a podcast about house music. I'm glad to be back, guys, and I'll keep putting out new episodes. Until next time, keep the beats alive.